Achieng had always run like something was chasing her, though no one in her small village of Nyakach had ever seen her afraid of anything. At 16, she was already known across the county as the girl who ran like the wind itself had chosen her feet. Children would stop their games just to watch her glide past, dust rising behind her like a whisper of greatness. Old women would shake their heads and murmur prayers saying, "That girl is not ordinary." But Achieng never saw herself that way. To her, running was the only thing that made sense in a world that often didn't. Her father had died when she was 9, leaving her mother, Mama Akinyi, to raise 3 children on a piece of land that barely yielded enough maize to survive the dry seasons. School fees came late, meals were sometimes skipped, and dreams were considered luxuries. Yet Achieng ran. She ran barefoot at first, her feet toughened by the red earth. She ran before dawn when the world was quiet and forgiving. She ran after school when hunger clawed at her stomach but hope burned stronger. And one day, everything changed. It was during the county athletics trials. Schools had gathered from all over, students wearing proper kits, proper shoes, proper confidence. Achieng stood at the edge of the field in a faded uniform and borrowed spikes 2 sizes too big. They laughed at her. "She'll trip before the first bend," one girl whispered. But when the gun fired, Achieng didn't just run. She flew. She left them all behind, so far behind that the crowd fell silent before erupting into disbelief. By the time she crossed the finish line, it was clear. Achieng wasn't just fast, she was extraordinary. Her coach, Mr. Otieno, grabbed her shoulders, eyes shining. "Nationals," he said. "You're going to nationals." For the first time in her life, Achieng allowed herself to dream beyond the horizon. Nationals meant scouts, scholarships, a future. But dreams, as she would soon learn, often come with a price. A week later, Mr. Otieno called her aside, his face heavy. "The school doesn't have the funds," he said quietly. "Transport, accommodation, we can't afford to send athletes this year." Achieng blinked, the words not making sense at first. "But I qualified." "I know," he said. "You deserved it more than anyone. But deserving doesn't always mean possible." The world tilted. All the mornings, all the running, all the sacrifices, they suddenly felt meaningless. That evening, Achieng didn't run. She sat outside her home, staring at the empty road, her chest tight with something she couldn't name. Her mother sat beside her in silence for a long time before speaking. "You're thinking of giving up," Mama Akinyi said. Achieng didn't answer. "Life will test you," her mother continued softly. "Not when things are easy, but when they seem impossible." "It's not fair," Achieng whispered, her voice breaking. "I did everything right." Mama Akinyi placed a hand on her shoulder. "Sometimes the road doesn't open for one person alone. Sometimes it takes many hands to clear the way." Achieng didn't understand what she meant until the next morning. Word had spread. No one knew exactly how, but by sunrise the entire village was talking. The fastest girl in Nyakach might not go to nationals, not because she wasn't good enough, but because she was poor, and something stirred. That afternoon, the village elder called for a meeting under the old baobab tree. "We have watched this child grow," he said, his voice carrying across the gathered crowd. "Her victory is our victory. Her struggle is our shame." Murmurs of agreement rose. "We will not let her dream die," he declared. "We will raise the money." Achieng stood at the edge of the crowd, stunned. Women offered what little they had, coins wrapped in cloth, chickens, even sacks of maize. Men pledged to sell firewood, to contribute labor, to do whatever it took. For the first time, Achieng felt something shift inside her. This wasn't just her dream anymore. It belonged to everyone. But not everyone was as generous as they seemed. Among the crowd was a man named Oduor, a distant relative who had recently returned to the village with a reputation for success in the city. He stepped forward with a confident smile. "I will oversee the funds," he said, "to ensure everything is handled properly." The villagers nodded. He was educated, experienced, someone they could trust. Achieng hesitated but said nothing. The fundraiser grew beyond anything anyone expected. Nearby villages contributed. Former students sent money. Even strangers moved by the story offered help. Within days, they had more than enough. Or so they thought. A week before the trip, Mr. Otieno came running to Achieng's home, his face pale. "The money," he said. "It's missing." Achieng felt her heart drop. "What do you mean missing?" "Oduor says there were expenses, transport arrangements, administrative fees, but the accounts don't add up. There's barely enough left." The world that had just begun to rebuild itself around hope came crashing down again. Achieng confronted Oduor that evening. "You promised," she said, her voice trembling with anger. "You said you would help." "I did help," he replied calmly. "Things cost money. You wouldn't understand." "You stole it," she said, the word tasting bitter. Oduor's smile faded. "Be careful what you accuse me of, girl." The village was thrown into chaos. Some defended Oduor, others demanded answers. Accusations flew, trust shattered, and the unity that had once felt unbreakable began to crumble. Achieng watched it all with a heavy heart. This was never what she wanted. Her dream had brought out not just kindness, but greed, betrayal, and division. That night she made a decision. "I'm not going," she told her mother. Mama Akinyi looked at her surprised. "After everything?" "I can't let this destroy us," Achieng said. "It's not worth it." Her mother was silent for a moment, then nodded slowly. "If that is your choice, I will stand with you." The next day, Achieng gathered the villagers. "I'm grateful," she began, "for everything you've done, but I don't want this to tear us apart. I'm giving up my place." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "You can't," someone shouted. "This is your chance." Achieng shook her head, tears in her eyes. "Not at the cost of our unity." For a moment, no one spoke. Then something unexpected happened. An old woman stepped forward, the same one who had once prayed over Achieng as she ran. "This child has shown us something," she said. "Not just speed, but heart." She turned to the crowd. "Are we really going to let greed win?" One by one, people began to speak up. Doubts turned into courage. Voices rose, demanding accountability. Under pressure, Oduor finally broke. The truth spilled out. How he had taken the money, thinking no one would notice. How greed had clouded his judgment. The villagers were furious, but Achieng stepped forward. "Let him return what he took," she said quietly, "and let that be enough." Some protested, but she stood firm. "This journey was never just about winning races," she said. "It was about who we become along the way." In the end, Oduor returned the money. Not all of it, but enough. The village came together once more, stronger this time, wiser. And when the day finally came, Achieng stood at the edge of a different starting line, this time at the national championships. She wore new spikes, a proper kit, and carried with her the hopes of an entire community. But more than that, she carried their lessons. When the gun fired, she ran, not just for herself, but for every hand that had lifted her, every voice that had believed in her, every mistake that had nearly broken them. And as she crossed the finish line faster than she had ever run before, she realized something. Winning wasn't just about being the fastest, it was about never running alone.